Darksiders, a post-apocalyptic violent story of revenge and redemption, starring the one and only writer of the Red Horse War. Published by THQ in 2010, the first project of newly formed developers Visual Studios, started by comic artist Joe Madureira and game designer David L. Adams. There are now 3 mainline entries in the series of games, so I thought, let's take a look at where it all started. There is the War Mastered version, which was released in 2016 for the more recent consoles. That is some prettier graphics, though we'll be looking at the original for the Xbox 360 because it's the one I have. Rated M for mature, mature in this case meaning ages 17 plus, for its blood and gore, intense violence, and suggestive themes. It was rated by the American company, the ESRB, Entertainment Software Ratings Board. Similar to movie ratings, it was founded in 1994 due to violent and sexually charged video games being released on the market to the eye of parents. Based upon their own moral standards, they are solely responsible for the rating majority of games and apps released today. The game received mostly positive reviews across the board, with an average in the low 80s. Praise was given for its combat and story, all being held together by the new and creative world and characters. Darksiders is highly action-based, with some platforming, with multiple weapons and combos to be used at the player's discretion. Puzzles will be solved and enemies will be slaughtered, all in the name of the Horseman's honor, after being framed for defying the ceasefire treaty between the denizens of heaven and hell. In the world of Darksiders, a being called the Creator has brought about realms and races since the beginning of time, 2 of them being the angels and demons residing in heaven and hell respectively. Heaven and hell are at war, the angels fighting in the name of the Creator, law and order, and the demons fighting in the name of anarchy, power, and 'cause they can. The Charred Council was soon created to help maintain the balance between good and evil, believing that too much power on either side would break the balance and spin creation into chaos. Creation being Darksiders' name for their universe. Having fought for millennia, a new, weaker race called humans was introduced to creation, and with it a treaty. Heaven and hell are to cease fire until the humans have become powerful enough to join in the war, marked by the breaking of the 7 seals. This Armageddon would determine the fate of the 3 kingdoms. The Charred Council have chosen the 4 horsemen, War, Death, Fury, and Strife, to fight for the balance, punishing those, whether angel, demon, or man, that threaten to tip it. The horseman War has been summoned to Earth, marking the apocalypse. Upon arrival, heaven and hell are in the midst of battle. Archangel Abaddon, in shock by War's presence, is killed by Straga, a powerful demon and one of the Chosen. War is soon stripped of his powers and summoned to face the Charred Council. The Horseman is then blamed for marching with Hell and the new threat, the Destroyer, on Earth, bringing about an early apocalypse while the 7th seal remains intact. War defends himself and is sent back to the Earth to find the ones responsible, under the eye of the Watcher, an enforcer of the Charred Council. Earth is now destroyed and desolate, with Hell being the victor. After War's 100-year imprisonment, mankind has been wiped out, and the soldiers of Heaven, the Hell Guard, being locked out of the White City, Heaven, until the balance has been restored. War then seeks Vulgrim, a demon merchant who had lost favor with the Destroyer and sought the Charred Council. He sells War upgrades and powers in return for harvested souls. War then seeks out Samael, a demon who was soon to take the spot of the Dark Prince as ruler of Hell, a plan interrupted by his refusal of the Dark Prince's company, the Destroyer, and was then imprisoned. Released by War, he tasked the Horsemen with returning to him the 4 hearts of the Destroyer's Chosen, in return for a path to Destroyer's Tower where he and Straga reside, the final destination of War's journey of balance and revenge. War wields his Chaos Eater, his sword which he uses to attack those that attack him. The majority of the time, that's how it works. War kills to stop those who get in the way of his goal. While not only attacking demons, he'll also have to attack angels. Their reason for attacking is because of their own belief in War's betrayal. These angels and demons are also not ethereal. They are organic and biological, like man, as shown by the limb tearing and spouts of blood. So yes, they can be killed. During the prologue, War may also attack the innocent humans on Earth and kill them, though there is no incentive to do so, but it may be done whether purposely or accidentally. There is incentive, however, to attack the ravens lying about. As you approach them, they will attempt to fly away, though with a swift swing of his sword, War can slay them, of which will restore some of War's health with their sacrifice. If the player were to look up for whatever reason, they may see helicopters flying about. An achievement, a sort of trophy banner, in the game is rewarded for chucking a car at one, a sort of kudos for completing a certain task. Why? Because why not? There's also tons of property damage, though I doubt anyone owns or possesses any of the heirlooms or objects lying about. You can pick up cars and other objects to fling at enemies, dealing damage. Also, War's a big guy. Just walking into a street post will knock it down. Also, a very small amount of souls are sometimes received when destroying objects, though it's hardly enough to be worth the effort. While attacking enemies, when their health gets low enough, a B button prompt will appear above their heads. When pressing it, it will immediately interrupt any combo and War will slide on in, pulling off a brutal finisher. This is an entirely optional maneuver with regular enemies, however, with the incentive being a faster kill and a use of the momentary invincibility, of which can be useful during hectic situations. As with bosses, finishers are not optional and are required to get the cinematic ending to the fight. Once encountering Valgrim, in order to purchase upgrades for War's fighting abilities, the player will have to surrender their collected souls, absorbed from incapacitated enemies, demons, and angelic, and objective, alike to the demon. He particularly prefers younger ones.
There were a few young ones. Spectacular.
As any being can seemingly take control of slayed one's souls, it seems this creator places no, or at least lesser, limitations on a being's power. Giving away your souls is optional, though mandatory in the first mission where Valgrim asks for 500. However, if you do not give the demon souls, the game will be tougher as you lack in combos and upgrades. Among enemies encountered are the common wicked. Though zombie-like, they are merely husks of human corpses that absorb the demonic energy left behind by Hell's forces. They often glow in the head and chest, where instead of their vital organs are filled with demonic power, the souls of the humans who once occupied these bodies are now gone, and their bodies now serve as a vessel of energy. They are one of the easiest enemies to kill that serve little damage and can be one-hit killed by pressing the B button. When killed in this way rather than a normal sword swing, they will provide health. Fleshbursters are big fellas who explode in flames upon defeat. These enemies are classified as undead. Through necromancy, the demons of hell summon the deceased along with their souls to fight for them, a practice abhorred by the angels. On War's way to the first dungeon, you will come across a graveyard where, upon destroying the 7 cross-shaped gravestones, you will be rewarded with a hidden chest. After some eye-stabbing, beast-jacking, and a turret section of angel killing, we finally arrive at our destination. Some platforming and puzzle-solving later, we finally meet Ms. Bat Boobies herself,
her jugs hanging out, flopping around in the rain,
Tiamat. After lobbing some explosives, she will then ask for mercy, but upon laughing at War's request to return the balance, her heart is torn from her chest and returned to Samael. We are then sent to meet the Black Hammer. After War figures out the identity of the hammer, we find that Ulthane has a problem with any pigeons who set foot on his land. After a competition of angel killing between Ulthane and War, this maker will open the door to our next destination, home of the second of the chosen, and piles upon piles of dead angel corpses, ultimately receiving the second heart after brutally bashing in its skull. Around this point, after doing some backtracking to find collectibles with our newly found weapons and ways of traversal, War's walking speed can start to seem rather slow. If you wait a little longer before backtracking, however, the Red Horse himself will have entered the fray. Being rescued from a demon gladiatorial arena, Bruin provides a faster way of travel, but is rather late to the party and can't be used in most locations. However, is entirely essential on receiving the third heart and traversing the Ashlands. We are now on our way to our fourth and final heart. Lucky for us, a couple friendly spiders carry us on over to the children's domain. After some time of puzzle solving and my skin crawling, we defeat our enemy who upon death reveals to us that the chosen in fact do not guard the Black Tower, but are holding Samael's power within their hearts and are guarding his imprisonment. We then play Jailbreaker by tearing out her heart, returning Samael to its full power, and are led on the way to our final dungeon, the Black Tower. For the player, the angels have so far been portrayed as the enemy who are trying to prevent the player from their goal. Not much communication has been done thus far, with the only personal encounter being the battle between War and Uriel as she runs in to punish War for his crimes here and now. Since being locked out of heaven, he cannot be tried in the White City. Uriel is the only female angel we see in the game and becomes the commander of the Hellguard after Abaddon's death. Samael refers to her feelings from early on in the game, saying she had more than just professional feelings for Abaddon, making his death a very personal burden for her. As we can determine thus far, the angels in this game are very organic, so how can an organic female have enough strength to best heaven's strongest male warriors and become their leader is beyond me. Perhaps angel male and female bodies aren't as far in strength in the world of Darksiders as they are in normal humanity, though they are both equally as organic. Uriel is portrayed all too femininely other than physically. She is a strong warrior, deep and commanding voiced, which is not entirely representative of being the weaker vessel, though her leadership of the Hellguard isn't entirely blasphemous, as submission is required only within marriage and the church. Along with having a natural flesh, she also has fleshly desires through her romantic love for Abaddon. So in this world, there's no separation of spirit and body in heaven. We can infer sexual relations or marriage isn't something that solely humans can experience. Biblically speaking, angels have always been referred to as he. They maintain masculine names and have appeared as men when speaking with prophets. That's not to say it is not an angel or God's power for one to appear as female, though it hasn't been biblically recorded. Uriel doesn't simply portray herself as female, rather she is a full biological female. That is how she was born and how she identifies. While only being referred to as the Red Horse, biblically, here he is given the name Ruin. He is found in a desert-like area known as the Ashlands. The Ashlands itself being the location of the deceased on Earth, where the ashes of their bodies have piled. Demons have overrun the place just like the rest of the Earth, and while traversing, one can come upon towers and drills. The drills are what demons use to dig for water and continue to relate to their organic forms, not only having sexual desires, blood and flesh, but also a need to drink and possibly eat and sleep. Now, our Black Hammer Ulfane is another being in God's image, albeit stocky yet gargantuan. He is part of the race of Makers, a society created long before angels and demons who, in fact, helped build cities in heaven and hell, being a very crafty race. And that is about as far as their relation goes. Makers are separated from the war between the three kingdoms, have no qualms or alliances with either side, but will defend what they believe in, as seen through the massacre of the pigeons. Realistically, of course, it's not impossible for God to have been creating far before the creations of heavens and earth, though nowhere in the Bible is that touched upon. Among the newer enemies we'll be fighting against are some more necromantic raised dead, undead shield lords, and a blue flesh burster called the Ravenous. This version of the demon will absorb souls from the air. While flying through the Echo Gorge on the angelic beast, we will encounter giant flying demons known as the Fallen. These creatures were once angels who have fallen, being so filled with demonic energy that they have become irrecognizable to their previous forms. Rot maulers can also be found who emit poisonous gas, meaning War can breathe, as it harms him, though he can stay underwater all day. We will also meet the Dark Angels, but unlike the Fallen, they've retained their previous form but with a different color variation and moral code. A mini-boss encountered in the first dungeon is the Jailer. The Jailer holds the souls of his victims within his cages and summons them to fight for him. So while being able to use souls through necromancy like the rest of the demons, he can also keep them from traversing through the afterlife. One may also turn back to find unreachable collectibles, where one will encounter Wicked K, an unusually smart version of the Wicked. His intention was to be an Easter egg throughout the game, though his mere existence brings the lore of the Wicked into question. When entering the Black Tower, the player will meet the Angel of Death, the Steward of the Underworld and the Watcher of the Well of Souls, Azrael. Azrael is imprisoned after being defeated by the chosen Straga and is forced to open the well, where the Destroyer will draw his power. Azrael then reveals to War that Abaddon planned to destroy Hell ahead of time, while the kingdom of man wasn't ready. He was convinced that the entirety of Hell being in one place on Earth would bring an easy victory. Hell would be blamed for the attack on Earth, as it would be heaven's word against the Prince of Lies. Abaddon had no desire to involve the horsemen and preserve the 7th seal while destroying the previous 6 to summon the demons, though Hell was privy to Abaddon's plan leading to heaven's defeat on Earth. War promises to not punish Azrael for the time being in return for passage out of the Black Tower. With the burden of this conspiracy on War's shoulders, the player traverses through the tower, the largest and most puzzle-rific dungeon of the game, filled with the game's most difficult enemies. Upon destroying the 3 guardians, Azrael is released from his prison as War goes off to take his revenge on Straga. With his defeat, the Black Tower crumbles and Azrael takes War to Eden, the first home of man. Here it is revealed that Azrael brought Abaddon to Eden to receive a gift from the Tree of Knowledge, though the gift remains unknown. Before War can receive his gift, he must defeat the demonic energy within him that he's absorbed throughout his travels. Upon its rather literal defeat, War is granted access to the tree where the truth is revealed. After Abaddon is defeated by Straga, an unknown woman's voice speaks to him, asking would he rather serve in heaven or rule in hell. Convinced, Abaddon became the Destroyer to avoid the Council's wrath for his plot. The Charred Council was aware of this plot, but knew the Horsemen wouldn't enact justice without proof, so it was the Council who summoned War, knowing he would destroy the guilty to preserve his name. War must now reform the Armageddon Blade, the blade forged by Ulfane that broke the seals, destroyed by Abaddon, and the only weapon that can destroy the Destroyer himself. War travels back through Earth to find all 7 pieces, where he once again meets Uriel. Uriel challenges War to next sacramentum, the loser of which must be killed by the victor. War wins the battle and spares Uriel for now, saying he decides when the angel dies. With all 7 pieces reforged by Ulfane, War confronts the Destroyer, holding the unconscious body of Uriel in his hands. He quickly tosses her aside after confessing Abaddon's love for her and turns his claws towards War. With the help of Ruin, War defeats the Destroyer, who reverts to his Dark Angel form, again to be defeated. After pleading with the now conscious Uriel for his life, she rejects him and his corruption, and is disposed of by War. After the Watcher tortures War and refuses his freedom, Uriel stabs War through the chest, fulfilling the next sacramentum and releasing him from the Council's chains. Wielding the Armageddon Blade, Uriel destroys the 7th seal to the dismay of the Watcher. This summons the Horsemen and resurrects War. He then squeezes the Watcher's head in his palms, with the ending shot of War's brothers hurling towards Earth. In Revelations, the 7 seals were placed upon a book, some believing it to be the Book of Life, to be broken only by the Lion and the Lamb, Jesus Christ, and nobody else. Azrael is the only one to break the seal in Darksiders, and eventually Uriel, under the influence of Abaddon with Ulfane's forged weapon. In creation, there is no Christ figure that we know of, solely the Creator in his one unknown form, and that is all. Who was planned to be the breaker of the seals originally is unknown, though it seems that anyone with access and the audacity could do so at any time. Azrael also watches the Well of Souls, and he is in charge of its opening. All souls, whether angelic, demonic, or human, enter the well, without God being ultimately in charge of his creations. It is delegated to an archangel who seems to be easily defeated by evil. The Charred Council, being put in charge by the Creator, isn't as truthful and can't throw out commands for people to follow, even while being revered by both heaven and hell. Unlike our Lord, they still need a reason and aren't completely trusted even by their own horsemen. Though, who could blame them, especially after conspiracies such as this? War seems just as organic as any other being in creation, with the ability to be killed just like the angels, mans, and demons. Unlike the real Eden, whose whereabouts are unknown, though some believe it to have been destroyed during the Great Flood, this garden can still be entered with Archangel Azrael in charge of its entrance and location. It seems he can bring in whoever he wishes to walk the land of man's original home. The Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil, which was absolutely forbidden, brought about sin and death. Sure, it also brought about knowledge of good and evil, just like the Darksiders tree, though instead of a gift, it was a curse. After Adam and Eve's first bite, no one ever bore witness to the tree again. While the Prince of Darkness is rarely mentioned and never shown, the Destroyer seems more like a Satan figure. He was a dark angel, fallen from heaven, sought power, and ultimately had a name change from Abaddon to the Destroyer. Lucifer, and Satan respectively. The Prince of Darkness is the ruler of all demonkind and hell itself. In pop culture, that is often how Satan is portrayed, though in actuality, hell is to be Satan's final destination, not where he rules on a throne. Looking out of game in places like the comics, the wiki, interviews, and our own Bibles, we can find some more information on the characters. Since we're focusing on the first game here, I'll try not to pull information relating more to the other games in the series. The creator of all things, in other words, the creator, is creation's version of God. The game itself doesn't get into who he is or what he represents, with only a couple mentions throughout the game. Our God, being the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, three yet one. As far as I can tell, there is no Christ or Holy Ghost-like figure in creation. He is the creator of all things, the omnipotent and the absolute. Unlike our God, who sits upon his heavenly throne, the creator does not reside in the White City, their other word for heaven. Instead of letting the angels be his messengers, he created the Charred Council to fulfill his will, to balance good with evil, because too much good is bad. At the beginning, he spoke with creation regularly, but over time he has vanished and remained silent to the frustration of some.
Or serve the justice of a corrupt council, and a creator abandons most faithful.
There is certainly a difference in how God spoke to his people in the Old Testament versus current day. It was certainly more direct, and many are confused as to why he isn't as prominent as before. It frustrates them to not be able to hear God's voice. That is a topic for another day, though I'd like to propose the question. Is it that God is not speaking to us, or is it that we are not listening? Now, I don't know if it was purposeful to parody the creator's silence and Abaddon's frustration, to parallel our own frustrations with the Lord's ways, though his transformation into the Destroyer definitely reflects just how far off some will fall after they begin to question their faith, opening their ears to the enemy, deafening the Father's call. Majority of the angels still revere the Creator and deliver what they believe to be his judgment, though these angels are not their Lord's messenger. They do not communicate with him or reside with him. The heaven in which they reside does not contain the Creator. They are entirely separated and can be tricked and have their eyes deceived. They seem to not be able to observe the world as closely as ours. In fact, the demons appear to have more knowledge than the angels, as they were aware of Abaddon's plan while he remained oblivious. Heaven in this world is neither sinless nor qualmless, as arguments, debates, and betrayal are evident. Faith in the Creator does not control the heavens hierarchy and beliefs, though that is what they claim. They are a battle-hardened civilization, rewarding prowess in battle and enforcing law, order, and justice. Their leader is unknown, though their archangels are highly exalted. Being organic, they are born, grow up, and can die, rising through the ranks as they age in battle. They can even be locked out of the White City if the balance is endangered, as reflected by the Hellguard trapped on Earth. Azrael has no mention in the Bible, though he does parallel as the Angel of Death in Judaism in the Hebrew Bible, which contains Masoretic texts, the Old Testament, and other Jewish texts. Uriel, on the other hand, is a part of some Christian myths as well as Jewish, though is also not mentioned biblically. Like every other angel, Uriel is referred to as he, not as she. The myths tell that he was sent to Ezra to answer his questions and rescues John the Baptist during the massacre of the innocents. The ally of the angels, Alphane, also has no mention that I could find within or out of the Bible, though in creation he is a maker, a race of beings older than heaven and hell. Along with building cities in the first two kingdoms, they also help to protect humanity. Now, being created far before most of creation, when makers die, their souls are put into giant constructs, with their memories not always intact, instead of going to the Well of Souls, where the souls of the three kingdoms reside. They are then reincarnated into another being, based on how they were judged, I would assume. Another contrast to the Bible, one life, one death, two possible destinations, being lost in the second death, or eternal life with Christ. Abaddon you can find in Revelations. He resides in the bottomless pit, Satan's first cell before being released to torment the wicked. Biblical Abaddon sends out locusts to torment those left on earth, save the chosen 144,000 of Israel, 5 months to the brink of, but not letting the wicked succumb to, death. There are several types of locusts in the game known as the Swarm, though they are easily taken down by a tap of the B button. The venom from their tails are not meant to kill, but cause immense pain, supposedly. Whether or not the locusts are an intentional reference to Revelations is unknown, and visually they don't match the description in Revelations. They are allied with Hell in Darksiders, though it doesn't seem as if they have any relation to Abaddon or his demonic form, the Destroyer. Now let's transfer from one who switched allegiances to Hell to somebody who grew in ranks rivaling the Dark Prince himself. Samael is again a Jewish angelic myth, being referred to as another angel of death and sometimes Satan himself, possibly being referenced by Samael's upcoming reign over Hell. Much like Satan, Samael spent his time tempting people to sin, even since the beginning, supposedly taking the power-hungry Lilith herself as his own, having her bear his children. Lilith is a pretty common figure in Judeo myths. She is believed to be Adam's first wife, created from the same dust, though refused to be submissive, leaving Adam in the garden for Samael. Remember the woman who tempted Abaddon in his transformation? That would be the voice of Lilith, though we're not told this in the game. Lilith has a more prominent role in later Darksiders material, though she plays a significant role in the mythos of creation. The giants mentioned in the KJV are often referred to as Nephilim in other translations. Since that's how Visual Studios chose to name them, that's the comparison we'll roll with. The Nephilim had no realm to call home and became jealous of man being given their original home of Eden. The Nephilim charged on Eden's inhabitants, who were being guarded by the angels. For the Nephilim grew weary of the race's constant thirst for conquest and allied with the Charred Council to preserve the balance. In the resulting war, man was relocated to Earth and the Nephilim were ultimately wiped out, all except for the four. As you can probably guess, these four Nephilim are War and his brothers, the Horsemen. Comparing War to the humans during the prologue of Darksiders, he can definitely be described as a giant. He rides his red horse, wielding the Chaos Eater upon the breaking of the seventh seal to maintain the balance of the three kingdoms. In actuality, he who sits upon the red horse wields a great sword, so far so good, but is sent after the breaking of the second seal, not along with the other non-blood related horsemen, but one at a time to the breaking of their own seals respectively. Yes, War is sent alone in Darksiders, but that was not what was originally prophesized. He would help to preserve balance, while our horsemen would bring bloodlust among men, tearing peace from the earth. War himself is a very violent, angry, and murderous being, though he does so in the name of the Council and the balance. Whether you believe the horseman to be literal or figurative, the entire reason of the horseman's state of being is preserved here as only a character trait. Okay, let's rein it back a little now. Why does this game exist in the first place? Darksiders was the first game to be created by Visual Studios, founded by comic artist Joe Madureira and game designer David L. Adams. While not knowing exactly which game they wanted to make, they knew it had to be Legend of Zelda inspired. For those not into the gaming scene, Zelda is a very popular and beloved series of adventure games by Nintendo, its first entry dating back to 1986. It helped define the video game industry as a major influencer, and if you played any of the Darksiders dungeons, art style aside, the gameplay and mechanics are reflective of one another. With the game genre decided on, it was time to find our main character. Design after design later, during a car ride, the theme of the Four Horsemen was decided upon after it happened to pop into Madureiro's head. The team claims the Horsemen are well-known, cool, and has sex appeal. Why does everything have to be sexy? And thus our characters were settled on. They directly claim that this interpretation is not the biblical one. It takes the idea from the Bible, adapts the looks into Matt's comic style, and throws in some fantasy horror, heavy metal, and skulls. The development was very art-driven, designing characters before deciding on their role in the world. David Adams quotes the development as crossing the ocean while building a boat. So there was no initial plan as to how to adapt the story, whatever happened just sort of happened. Now this is a total assumption, but it seemed as if they were coming at it from the angle that the Horsemen are just a story, not a divine prophecy, as well as placing Darksiders in a very literal interpretation of Revelations, taking the Horsemen as literal divine men, rather than a prophecy visualized through metaphor. I'm not saying either mindset is correct or incorrect, as I'm just showing both interpretations. Getting more personal with the team, well...
Our lead designer, he was away, and I think it was in the summertime, which is what made the joke even funnier, was that we decorated his office like Christmas. So when he came back, he couldn't even get into his office because it was just so much Christmas stuff in his office.
Awesome! There was a lot of inappropriate things, a lot of dicks drawn on people's whiteboards. I don't know if I should say that.
And then when our lead level designer, Ryan Stefanelli, when he had a kid, he was out on paternity leave. He came back and his office was plastered in baby toys, and diapers were hanging from the ceiling. So that there's always some sort of prank going.
They wanted to create a game that was very masculine and powerful, so I'm not exactly the target audience. In the end, it doesn't seem like any of the pranks were malicious in nature. Let them have fun.
The number of pranks we pulled on each other, it just felt like a bunch of guys having fun making a game. So that was, yeah, I'll take that with me forever.
So all in all, this game is very creative. The Vigil Games team has created an interesting world filled with great art and design. The fact they managed to complete the project after hearing of the difficult development and still end up with something good is admirable. Darksiders is basically one big revenge story. Christ's message of forgiveness is lacking, even though Christ doesn't seem to exist in this universe. Just taking a look at the rating on the game's case or any trailers for the game, then you can immediately tell that yes, it's very violent. I wouldn't call it sexual. No, I don't find bat boobies sexy. Taking a look at the only female humanoid character in the game, some of her concept art has her in more revealing clothing, but the design they settled on is definitely more appropriate and reasonable for a warrior, so kudos to Vigil on that. The game is not filled with much harsh language, the watcher aside.
Oh god, bitch!
Neither does it promote any sort of substance abuse other than Virgil's seeming addiction to souls. So what we'd focus on here is the violence. Is it too much? Is what we've seen today more graphic than, well, the entirety of the Old Testament? The Mosaic Law of Israel, the story of the plagues of Egypt, the stories of war and God's wrath, the story of the Levite and his concubine, animal violence like the hoeing of horses and animal sacrifices, King Jehoram's disease. What about our own Lord Jesus' crucifixion, an act of violence and torture of which we celebrate every year on Good Friday? The violence from where an entire religion holds its origins. But before you believe there's a difference between reading of violence and witnessing violence, were the people in the Bible not real? Were there no witnesses to those recorded events? Did you not watch the Passion of the Christ and applaud? Before you believe seeing is not as bad as committing, is there a difference between the man who held the blade and a man who presses the button? Before you believe violence is only committed by those who reject God, did God not command his own people to war? Did God's own hand not put death, sickness, and pain on those that disobeyed? These questions I want us all to think about, and we all will come to different conclusions. Perhaps you may believe it's okay for adults, but not children. Maybe someone who's particularly weak should stay away, or maybe that person is yourself. All I hope is that I inform. Even if the only one I informed is you, your eyes and your ears have been more than a blessing. So thank you, and God bless.